Well, it's the second day of All-Stars, but we're not really talking too much about All-Stars. Actually, we're filming this in the Travis Gafford suite for Travis Gafford Industries here. I'm joined right now by Riot Mart, who's the lead game designer on TFT. Good to talk to you again.
Yeah, good to be here again.
Yeah. So this is actually interesting because All-Stars this year features TFT as part of the game plan, and so I assume that's what brought you out.
Yep. We came out here to both see how TFT got played by the different the TFT pros as well as the league pros, but also we had some time to talk to some of the TFT players from all the different regions and sort of get their feedback on how things are going and where can we improve. So that was nice to do.
So what's the feedback that you've seen or heard?
So a lot of stuff that we kind of expected, which was good to know that we're on the right track. Set 2 has been playing better than Set 1. But it's not without its flaws. For example, the spectator experience has kind of ended up a bit worse with things like Summoner, for example. As well as some of the spells have led to a state where the positioning game is not as important as it was in Set 1 to some extent. So those are things we can take forward and keep getting even better, because again, Set 2 was better than Set 1. So we'll keep making Set 3 better than Set 2, things like that.
So I was going to ask you about that. It sounds like you're saying the spectating experience is kind of rough. And that was one thing I noticed was whenever you have, like ocean buffs going and summoners and mages, and it's just like the battles happen and it's hard to even see. Like Nami tidal waves are going back and forth. So it seems like this is something you guys also feel is a little too much.
We definitely felt that pretty early. And again, it was good to hear from players that they also feel that, so we're on the right track. But yeah, a lot of the damage is just sort of like all over the place. It's happening all the time. Whereas in Set 1, it was a lot more focused. You could think like Karthus ult and Aurelion Soul ult that were just like really impactful moments. And then, the amount of stuff with summoners, Zyra plants everywhere when you're running 2 Shojins and it gets crazy. So yeah, these are things that, again, like with every set, with every release, we get more and more information on like what makes TFT a better game. And so we'll just keep doing that.
So are these things that you're looking to address in the set at all, or do you think it's more of a learning for Set 3? I'm just wondering if we'll see like some of the visual clutter get toned down.
Yeah, we've actually had some really tough discussions about that because all of us want to make it better like right away. But doing that comes with a pretty big cost of change. Even something as simple as in the next patch, we're swapping the reroll and upgrade button for future development, but that's a big pain point. And so even something as simple as like Zyra spawns less plants might mean that the fantasy of summoners is not being fulfilled and promised as it was before. But that being said, we are still going to try to do some things, but some of it might just be, okay, we do need to take this as a key learning for Set 3, which is nice because the sets are only 4 months long, so it won't be that long, worst case.
Yeah. Looking at Set 2, one of the things that I noticed when I came into it was that in Set 1, as a League of Legends player, it was a little easier for me to like pick up what all the champions do and what they're capable of, whereas in this one, because there's so many different skins and the icons are sometimes like I'm looking for a champion and I completely am unaware that it looks like this kind of blue figure, and sometimes it's easy to get them mixed up. Is this feedback that you guys have heard?
Yep. Yeah, the common one is like Rek'Sai and Nocturne, for example, with their Eternium skins basically look very similar.
Well, and one of the, for me, also Nasus, who's light, like I have such an identity of that character being like a desert champion, so it's kind of interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah, we saw that a bit with Vayne being noble and light before as well. But yeah, it's one of those things that's tough because on the one hand, we do want to use the skins to do theming. We thought the theming with Elemental be really good here. But at the same time, we do think we pushed probably to the extreme end of how many different skins we should use and not enough base champions. So where we can, we'll be trying to fit more base champions in as well to give sort of that anchor for players who do understand that stuff. But at the same time, that would limit us to what we can do. So there will still be a large amount of skins. It's a tough balance.
Yeah. The pass has also changed a little bit, especially with the orb being like I think it's a 3-day now cooldown. How have you felt about the changes that have gone into that system?
So that's a really good example of like change of version, and sort of like everyone was used to my orb every day.
Yeah.
And so the first day it was live with the 3-day countdown, everyone was like, is this a bug? What's going on? But actually what it has done is made being able to play TFT a lot healthier. You don't have to play 5 games every day to get that orb filled up. It's like, no, you can actually spread that time out. The total amount of missions you have to do to get everything in the pass is much less. So we're not requiring you to basically play TFT every day, all day, and I think that's a much healthier experience.
Yeah. So right now it sounds like you're pretty satisfied with the changes that have gone through.
I would say, yeah, we're pretty satisfied. There's some clarity stuff there about, like, again, if you were used to it before, we didn't really make it clear what had changed. A lot of early comments were like, how long do I have? When does this pass go away? When's the next one? And it's like, whoa, things are different now. This is the whole set pass, you know.
So whenever, one question is, for me, I've not completed my pass. When I eventually do, am I going to continue to get reminders that the orb is up? Because I remember I teased you about this a little bit before, yeah.
Yes, I've talked to the team, and hopefully that notification will go away. It's especially painful for people who don't play TFT, and they still get that notification. Real talk, though, it hasn't been removed yet, but it is on the list, and hopefully very quickly can get taken care of.
Very good. So what are the areas that you guys are looking to? Obviously, it sounds like the visual clarity stuff is coming, maybe, or going to be considered as you guys are building out set 3. In set 2, where are you looking right now to improve and change in the next couple patches?
Yeah, so set 2 right now is going to be primarily balance and feel, which will always be happening. But then you're also going to start seeing some client improvements. Things like the collection tab, so that when you actually want to pick a little legend, it's not this really painfully awkward thing where you scroll to the bottom, can't remember if you have a 3-star or not, click it, oh, nope, I don't, redo the whole process again. So that'll get improved. As we're preparing for mobile, some team will free up and we'll start to get the spectator client going. So that'll be really nice to enable some things like tournaments, things like that. And then, yeah, as I just mentioned, we're basically, a lot of our work focus right now is getting ready for mobile, which will launch early next year.
Yeah. How much of the game itself, and if any at all, are we going to see change to complement mobile, right? Because I know you guys want this to be a shared experience where you can be on PC and somebody else can be playing on mobile.
Yeah. The sort of goal is that, like you said, you can play it on either PC or mobile, but we're not sacrificing like the PC experience to adapt for mobile or anything like that. So the amount of change you'll see should be minimal. Example is like switching those buttons, changing the UI at the top so that it was smaller to not block out as much of the screen. Next patch, you'll see a home button actually when you're in the carousel, so that you can quickly get back to your board. But that's actually just better for both PC and mobile. So it's like little things like that. And then the big one that everyone asks about is the carousel. How will that work on mobile? And we think we've got a pretty good solution where you'll still be able to use your fingers to move around and it won't be a painful experience.
Well, because I've also noticed that the carousel feels different in this set. And it's not even, I know some of it is that collision is not a thing, right? It is a thing now, but, or no longer a thing, but is a thing in the very beginning. But it also feels like kind of, it's stranger, it's a little different the way whenever I click in the movement.
So the change you're noticing that you're talking about is you used to be able to click inside the circle and your unit would sort of like try to get to there, your little legend. But now if you ever click inside the circle, it just says that didn't count.
Okay.
And so if you're struggling with that, like my advice, like we still have to improve this because that's totally not clear. But in the meantime, if you want a bit of an advanced trick, is just never click inside the circle.
Okay, good.
Click right outside the edge, and you'll be able to move.
This will help me get so many items way easier, especially at the beginning of them. Thank you for the tip. Unfortunately, now other people will watch this, and then they'll also know about it. So
I mean,
my competitive advantage will be ruined in that sense.
Leaking the pro strats.
Exactly. That's what people come to my channel for,
That's
pro strats. Now, I also just am curious. You guys made the decision, and when I interviewed, I think the last time I interviewed you, it was before Set 2 was coming out, and you guys were kind of teasing it.
Yep.
You didn't mention at the time the board size.
Yep.
And actually, I felt like you guys didn't mention that anywhere, as if you were kind of like because in the beginning, I remember this was a pretty big criticism of the game. You changed it. It felt like you kind of wanted to slide it under the radar. I don't know. It was kind of surprising to me that this wasn't a bigger topic of conversation.
It was definitely one of those things, like we knew we were doing it almost like a month after Set 1 launched. We'd been testing it internally for a long time. We didn't really advertise it as much because we think for most players, it's just sort of like there are more hexes. It's not a big deal. It's actually the more advanced players that like really appreciate what it does. At the same time, though, as much as it feels like a no-brainer to make the board bigger, we have seen some side effects that we were afraid of come to life, which is, again, like the positioning doesn't matter quite as much. It's like you kind of just make the same general formations, but the actual position on the hexes doesn't matter as much. And so that's one of those things that, again, we're seeing the pros and cons of small and bigger board and trying to use that to adapt to set 3 design.
How successful do you feel the kind of randomized element hexes have gone through?
Pretty good. They hit one of our big goals, which was adding variation on each game. You know, the difference between an ocean game and an inferno game is one thing, but also just like, well, wait, if the ocean tile's up front versus the ocean tiles in the back, what can I do differently? So in that regard, it's been really successful. At the same time, the clarity of like it counts as an item slot has kind of been a miss so far.
Yeah.
We see people all the time. It's like I put a thieves' gloves on someone and then move them on the hex. Oh, I completely forgot. And that was meant to be a strategic decision, so it wasn't obvious to just always put your 3-item carry on the hex. But that clarity hasn't quite panned out as well as we wanted it to.
Okay. And I'm kind of curious when you look at things like, so in this Rise of the Elements set, it makes a lot of sense that you'd have these kind of elemental hexes.
Mm-hmm.
Is this the type of thing where, okay, this is kind of like the unique mechanic for this set, and then later on we won't necessarily have that come back? Or is it the type of thing where you're like, oh, this is great, it adds a lot of variation. Maybe all the future sets will have, maybe you do like a hex tech set, and suddenly there's a hex tech hex somewhere on the board or something, I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's the best comparison I can actually put is like Magic the Gathering, how like every time they introduce a new set, there's sort of a new core mechanic. And if that core mechanic works and makes the game better, just universally better, we would definitely keep it and keep moving forward with it. But if not, it might be the kind of thing where it's like, this was cool for a while, now let's go have it go away, and maybe it'll come back. So using your example, let's say set 5 was the Hex Tech set, maybe it'd be a good time to bring back the elemental hexes.
Gotcha, okay.
But in the case of elemental hexes, I'm not sure that it's hit that bar for like, this should just be in every game from here on out. And so in set 3, you would likely see that go away and be replaced with some other cool new mechanic.
Now that the game has settled into itself, I think, over all these months, and especially with the rise of set 2 and the elements, I'm kind of curious, do you see a pretty big difference in League of Legends players and TFT players?
Yes, absolutely. Just different expectations of what a game entails. League of Legends players, for example, are not very compassionate when it comes to random. Any random element is like, what are you doing? Get that out of here. And obviously, TFT is all about adapting to randomness and dealing with randomness. So those sort of player types definitely clash quite a bit. It's also, I think, you see this a lot with League of Legends players, especially like your Lee Sin, Yasuo, Zed mains, things like that like the really action-packed skill expression. Whereas TFT is much more about the strategic skill expression. And so again, very different player needs that we have seen sort of separate out into 2 different buckets.
And do you find these are very different audiences too? I mean, as in, I'm curious what the Venn diagram looks like for League of Legends players to TFT players. If there's a ton of people who've never really played League or don't play League that play TFT, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely seeing, like, being a part of League of Legends definitely gave TFT a wider audience to start. And then we saw some players who like to dabble in both, some players who are just like, nope, TFT, not for me. And then actually we've seen some players who are just like, hey, this is exactly what I need out of a game. This is something I can just like watch something on the other monitor while playing and relax a bit more. So definitely different audiences, but it has been sort of spread out about like how much each people play one. We've got our dedicated TFT, our dedicated League, and actually a pretty good mix of both.
Okay. Going back to All-Stars, what have you thought? I know we've only seen a little bit of it so far on the first day, but what do you think of the tournament that's happening right now and sort of the meta that's taking place?
Yeah, it's been pretty interesting. So the first game we saw was the Legends game, where Becca won with the Predator Crystal build. And that was cool to see because there were a bunch of different builds in the top 5, even like Dog's Blade Master Nocturne that he almost had good items for, but not quite. Ended up getting him a 5th. Becca getting uncontested Skarner allowed her, and then she got the Crystal Lux, which was really cool. We are still seeing sort of the obvious powerhouses though. The Woodland Assassin Hyper Roll almost dominated that game, which is. But in that regard, it has been like kind of like how we expected to play out. On the other hand, the Littles game was way more interesting because that was a really good representation of how most people play the game and most people perceive the game. And like I know people were memeing pretty hard on like Sneaky's Bloodthirster Singed, for example. But again, like that's how people actually experience the game. And so getting to see sort of both sides of the coin was really interesting.
Well, and I should ask you, because I'm sure some people watching this might not have caught the series, or what are these two formats? There's the Legends and the Littles.
Yeah, so as I understand it, the way it works is there's the Legends, which are actually people who are TFT pros, play a lot of TFT. And the top 4 from each of those games get to move on to Saturday. And then there's the Littles, which are League of Legends pros who don't play that much TFT. And they've been sort of paired up with a legend. And then the top 4 of those also move on. And then on Saturday, everyone plays again. And I believe the highest scoring pair get to choose a charity to donate the money to.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
And I think this is the first time I can imagine, unless I'm forgetting something, this is the first time where there's like an audience there for a TFT match, like the first in-person audience event.
Yep.
What is it like for you to see that take place?
It's interesting. I'm not necessarily convinced that like TFT is an audience-related kind of game. But at the same time, it's been cool to see. I think the people who are here at Vegas do seem pretty engaged with it and pretty excited to see what's going on. Hearing some actual audible gasps, for example, when Sneaky's Maokai came back and like 4v1'd and won the round for him. Those are the moments that are like, all right, this might have some potential. This is pretty exciting.
Yeah, so this is maybe an experiment for you guys as you're sort of looking at this and trying to figure out what next year looks like. Because I know you've mentioned that competitive TFT will be a thing next year.
Yep. The comparison I like to use is we always compare it to like poker, fitting enough we're here in Vegas.
Right.
And it's like poker is an okay spectator. Like there are definitely people who like to watch it live. But at the same time, like ESPN has done some pretty cool stuff where it's like you actually just kind of watch key hands and things like that. So I think we're still trying to figure out what's the best way to broadcast and even just format competitive TFT.
Yeah. Well, what's coming down the line for TFT in the set? Because I know you guys, I believe, have already teased some additional champions that have come in. Did they come in on Wednesday?
So Wednesday, we have patch 924, which has Lucian, Senna, and Amumu.
Yeah.
Patch 10.1, I can say there will be more champions. That's early January, right after the holidays. And in addition, we're doing some pretty key item reworks.
Okay.
And then the plan is there will be one more batch of champions.
All right.
In set 2 after that.
All right. So we've got 3 coming up, it sounds like, right?
So
Senna,
Lucian, and Mumu.
Yeah.
Then a second batch on 10.1, and then a third batch shortly after.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Very good. All right. Fantastic. Is there anything that you want to say to any of the TFT fans out there?
Just as always, keep giving us feedback. We're looking to make the game as good as we can and keep improving it. And thank you so much for all the support. We've been blown away by how many people are playing TFT and enjoying it. So thank you so much.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the interview. It's great to talk to you again, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your time here in Vegas.
Thanks so much.
And have some luck if you end up at the tables.
I sure hope so.
For everyone else, you can check out the rest of my coverage of all things All-Stars right here on my YouTube channel. Happy esports holidays here from Travis Gafford Industries. You know what we would love in our stocking, under our tree, under our, I don't know, any number of different holiday traditions? You to subscribe to the YouTube channel, because we're getting close to 200K. I don't think we can do it this year, but it would help me a lot if you subscribe. That's a great gift for me. That's what I have on my wish list, just more YouTube subscribers. And what you should have on your wish list is, almost dropped it off my couch, this Alienware M15. You can check it out at alienware.com/Travis. There's a link in the video description. They've got a bunch of other stuff over there too. Monitors, desktops, peripherals. Go check them out. That super helps me. Just click the link. Take a look.